So hello everybody, welcome back to week 2 of Brock and Jack Talk The Bachelor here, ready to break down episode 2. Happened Monday night. Obviously, we're going to get straight into one of our segments that we're going to be introducing here because it was the main topic of the night and we're just going to love to get that out of the way. So it's time for the Royal Rumble.
Hey.
Excuse me, princess, but the queen is here. I mean, oh gosh. The queen has arrived, bitches!
So obviously, Victoria has proclaimed herself Queen Victoria. She's been a huge part of this episode. We're going to try and run down all of the Victoria moments of the night and get that over with. I'll throw a chapter in the video if you just want to skip Victoria, because I sure do. I'm sick of Victoria. Jack, how about you?
Oh, wow. I am totally sick of her. But you know what? This is reality TV. This will be bought into, and I'm eating it up. But, she is... She crazy.
I'm hoping that the producers see the action on Twitter this week and everybody being like, okay, we get it. You need to create drama, but enough. Create drama somewhere else. You can edit drama in where there isn't. We've had enough of this girl. But this week was all about Victoria. Let's just kind of start at the beginning. We'll run through Victoria's timeline of the episode, and then we'll run through the rest of it, hopefully with minimal Victoria interruptions. So we start out, first thing when the one-on-one date card comes, we get Victoria in there saying how it's absolutely ridiculous and fake, the idea that any of the girls would be happy for someone else for getting the one-on-one, and that she's just going to be pissed about it all day long. That really set the tone for her for the rest of the week.
It really did. I mean, right from the start. I mean, we saw her just complaining to the producers, not even want to talk to anyone else because
that was a
she
tough
apparently
look.
was super fed up with everyone.
Yeah, she went straight to the producers. She called everyone out for being fake, not, when they were real happy for Bri getting the one-on-one, she didn't like that. And then when they got mad at her for kind of generalizing people, she started pointing them out. She picked out Jacinia, who was just kind of basically being like, hey, I'm just happy for people. She picked out Marilyn, and I'll be honest, unless there's something happening behind the scenes that we're not, Marilyn has barely said anything, and Victoria has just pounced on her.
Yeah, she really did. I was wondering that as well. I was like, is there something that as roommates we're not seeing, or is it simply just does she want to have her own room? Because I mean, as you remember, I mentioned last week, I was like, you know what, this massive hotel, they all must have their own rooms. But no. I mean, the entire hotel is booked off. Like you can't book a room.
I did a little research on the resort, Minical, or Minical, and the main chateau we saw for the limo exit is not where they're staying. They're staying in a smaller hotel, but you're right. I think they'd still be able to find 24 rooms in there, and now down to 18. There was one poignant moment from Anna in the beginning, which really set Victoria off, but I think even crazy Anna might have had a point here, and basically it was saying, if you get this upset anytime anybody else gets attention from Matt, are you just going to force yourself into an absolute tailspin and a downward spiral here? And I think that that's true. I initially thought when Victoria came in last week, played the act that she was just being a competitor. She wasn't there to make friends, doing the whole thing. And the more I see her freaking out about other girls getting one-on-ones and attention, the more I think she might just be legitimately delusional. There's no part of this that's an act. She truly believes that it should just be her and Matt one-on-one the whole time.
Yeah, I think that as well. And it's not like there haven't been women like that in the past, or guys on The Bachelorette who have been like, oh no, I'm here. I need every moment. This is my show. This is my time to fall in love with them. But they forget it is a contest, and you have to have some sort of humanity when you see these other women and these other men with the suitor.
Yeah, you have to live with them. So she made a point of stating that she would rather go on no date than on a group date. But if Matt wanted her on a group date, she'd go for him. Kind of like, well, I get that he wants me there, so I'll show up. And that's exactly what happened. She wound up on the group date which was the wedding photo shoot, the trying on dresses. And we got to see our old pal Franco, the photographer, come back in. He's just an absolute gem.
He's a stud. He's great.
And we saw they kind of went in line a little bit. He was calling them up one by one. And Victoria was not about to have that. She wanted her royal wedding photo. And to the point where Franco even was kind of like, what is going on here?
He was eating up that crazy. He knew what was walking in that door.
Yeah, it was very obvious from the outset that she was going to make this about her. And then, obviously, she gets her thing. She gets sort of an attacking kiss on Matt. I thought that was extremely over the top, I guess.
Yeah, I was pretty uncomfortable in the middle of that.
Yeah, there are a couple screenshots I saw online today of Matt's face immediately following the kiss, and he looked horrified. As I think we all were.
It was the producer Rose. I mean, we acknowledged that.
Yeah. So the group date progresses, and we go into the Capture the Heart game, which was a capture the flag, only they tackled, and they were splashing each other with paint. And I'm not going to lie, I thought Victoria's Crazy was going to come out. I thought she was going to pull out a knife, and we were going to see some blood on the wedding dresses. And then she was more or less a non-factor.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking for that, and there was like one kind of shot of her running around, and honestly, it looked like she was having fun.
Yeah,
I was like, then, there's some humanity here.
One thing to note, when the teams were huddling, I caught there's a quick scene of her walking around the back and like hugging Kit.
I know,
which
I hated it.
We would not have thought was a thing last week, but I guess to me that was a little oops on the part of the producers to let that slip in there, because they led us to believe that nobody in that house was going anywhere near her ever. So to see, and she wanted nothing to do with any of them. So to see that little hug, it makes me wonder, obviously Victoria's terrible, but maybe she's getting a little bit of a bad edit as well. That's really highlighting just her craziest points. I don't want to defend her in any sense, but there was that little glimpse there that didn't really seem to match the rest of the episode.
Yeah, I definitely saw that, and it was kind of the same as well when Bree was first going off on her date. I mean, Kit and Victoria were both standing. I mean, granted, you could tell like almost immediately Victoria was getting a little weird, but she was still standing there talking, right in front of Kit.
Yeah, she's
and
still
I noticed this
in
because
the
it was
room.
super quick, and it caught. I had to watch it like 3 times over just to make sure I got the scene right. It showed Kit saying, "Wow, that would have been an ideal date." And Victoria more or less like kind of nodding, and then it was like the end of the scene. It was super quick.
So moving on past the group date, we get back. The next time we see Victoria, first of all, before we move on from the group date, all timeline from Victoria in this one, when talking about the teams they were divided into, her team was a bunch of queens, and the other team was a bunch of gestures.
They were gestures.
And I just want to shout out the guy running the subtitles over at Hulu, who made a point of putting quotes around the word gestures just to highlight the fact that she messed that up. So kudos to him.
Needs a promotion.
I like that, because every now and then you'll see when people are saying like sup or some slang like that, the subtitles will say what's up. They'll spell it out. This guy went out of his way to point out that she messed up that phrase. Absolutely fantastic. So,
I would love to have him on the show as a guest speaker, or to edit our show with subtitles.
Yeah, that seems like a far cry. So we move into the cocktail party, and Victoria she breaks down here. She loses her mind, and she goes in to talk with Matt, and first of all has a very deep talk with him. Basically describes the fact
deep she's ever had.
So deep, not that deep very often. Expressed all these deep insecurities. Basically just saying, I was worried I didn't look good in a wedding dress. Oh, sweetheart, yeah, you're right. You are just the deepest girl out there, worrying about how you look in a wedding dress. That sets you apart. Shut up. But that's not the part that really mattered here. She basically describes Marilyn harassing her to the point where she didn't feel safe in the house. And I know that he doesn't have the advantage of the camera angles we did, but Matt seemed to buy far too much of that story.
He really did, and that was something I was when we saw Chris Harrison come in right before the rose ceremony. I was like, okay, Chris is gonna walk in. He's gonna be like, hey man, you know, try to look at every side of the story. But he even said he's like, Matt was like, oh, I don't know how I feel about Marilyn right now. It's like, dude, you just had like an extremely like deep, nice moment, and now all of a sudden you're just gonna
Yeah,
throw that all away because some crazy woman is saying something else. You know?
yeah. So Victoria described her and Marilyn as oil and vinegar. Just really keeping the nice the cliches rolling there from
She's
Victoria.
great with analogies.
And Matt called Marilyn back in to discuss that, and I thought almost to her detriment, Marilyn took the high road here and just kind of said,
Yeah.
it's my word versus hers. You have to believe me. Didn't throw Victoria under the bus. Didn't say, hey, go ask everybody else. She's nuts. Just really took sort of a polite approach, which if you're reading that, and if I'm Matt and I know what's going on, I look at Marilyn's super polite, super respectful approach to the whole thing and go, okay,
You're
this
very mature.
doesn't seem like the type of person who's going to be lying to me about all this. Whereas Victoria displays a lot of characteristics of somebody who probably is.
Yeah, and that was something that I mean, everyone was disappointed with Matt in doing, and that obviously Sarah as well, which we'll get to that. But yeah, I mean, honestly, it's all these women have got to think, okay, Matt's keeping this woman Victoria in the hotel. What does that say about his personality and his character?
Yeah, and again, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt because he's only seeing the moments where he's there. If he had access to the same, view of it and the cut and all the behind the scenes when he's not around that we do, it would be painfully obvious. But he doesn't have access to that, which is a little bit unfortunate. So obviously we don't know how that concludes, how everything goes, as it ended quite abruptly. We'll get to that in the end. So from here on out, we're going to do our best to not say the name Victoria.
You just said it.
It's starting now. We're going to try and outline the episode without her. We went through how she played into everything, but I really think for the benefit of all involved, it would be nice to have a queen-free remainder of the episode. So we'll get into
gestures.
It. Sort of going back to the beginning, we have Bree gets invited for the one-on-one. They get on the ATVs. They go riding. Seemed like a neat way to go. Again, this resort has just about everything you could ever ask for. So they go get down and dirty. Bree mentions this isn't the type of thing she normally does. She's not sort of outdoorsy and adventurous, but seemed to really kind of get into it and have a good time on the date.
Yeah, I mean, she definitely showed her fun side in this date. It was certainly, I think it's certainly what Matt was looking for. He was looking for kind of a fun date versus maybe a serious date, which was Sarah's, which we'll talk about in a second. But I definitely think, I mean, even when they were flipped off the ATV, which in of itself, I mean, Matt clearly had never done that before, with good safety precaution.
Yeah, he didn't know what he was doing at all.
No, he was whipping back and forth.
Which you could do.
Like, oh my gosh! I'm like, he's gonna flip himself.
My brother and I grew up riding four-wheelers, ATV, stuff like that.
Oh, I know.
And you whip it back and forth, and I said the key thing there to show you that he doesn't do that very often is your average guy when he's fishtailing, if he gets it up on two wheels, he kind of locks it back in like, oh shit, what almost just happened? You kind of get that little scared look. He just kept on going like he didn't even realize what had just occurred. So not a lot of experience.
I don't even know if that might have been like on purpose. I hope it wasn't, but like.
And even when you flip it, you got to realize this isn't a bike landing on top of you. These things weigh several hundred pounds, so it's good that it ended up the way it did.
But leg.
They got lucky on the fall there. It was interesting. They fall in the mud, and this is where I kind of make the comment. Bree mentioning she's not outdoorsy, doesn't do the adventurous stuff. All of a sudden, we're having a fight in the mud.
I don't believe her.
Seemed like she really, for someone who apparently wasn't into that, seemed like she was really able to just kind of let that down and embrace the date.
Yeah, I mean, and if that's how she actually is, then yeah, I think she did a great job of just trying to show Matt every side of her and just living life like MJ. I think Bree could take a no from her.
So we get one of the gratuitous shirtless scenes here as Matt goes to chop some wood for the wood-fired hot tub that they climb into. Believe it or not, we saw a hot tub on a one-on-one. Can you believe it?
Yes,
I can believe
I
it.
know.
It's unbelievable.
Blew my mind.
So they get in the hot tub. Brie kind of panders for a kiss there. Not a ton.
Katie Cookta, how are you?
So I didn't think anything too much of consequence happened while they were in the hot tub. Obviously, they had a little bit of a conversation, sort of about family, which was a big deal. I forget if that happened in the hot tub or during dinner. But they talked a lot about their upbringing, sort of a relationship with a father, their common, want for a large family to sort of replace what they didn't necessarily have growing up. I thought it was almost eerily similar the way that they described their feeling towards their fathers and family there, which I think will bode well for Brie moving forward with that sort of shared history and value system.
Yeah, I certainly think that as well. Something that I kind of had my qualms with this was that, I thought, really the order of this date seemed a little off because, they did the ATV ride and then they did the hot tub and then dinner. And something that we see with Sarah's date after was, it left, time for the hot tub for, whatever passion was going to happen there. It left that for after dinner, after this serious talk. And I think because that's the part where they just want to be close and have fun.
Yeah,
But,
I think the nature of the outdoor hot tub in conjunction with it kind of led to that timeline. But I do agree with you. Normally you have that serious talk and then you kind of take that deep breath and okay, let's go, do more of the physically intimate side of things. Either way, I thought that this was a really great one-on-one. I thought they had a lot of a lot of personal time, a lot of stuff discussed. I felt like this was the better of the two one-on-ones personally. The other one, of course, being Sarah, and we can get into that one next. So Sarah had the plane one-on-one. They hopped in the biplane, which she described as the first plane ever made. Obviously not able, similar to being on the ATV, not a lot of conversation during the plane ride, but definitely able to get a little deeper after. We saw Sarah sort of struggle to open up when they're just sitting there, and it wasn't until we got to dinner that she finally was a little more open to talk about her dad and her family and those sorts of things.
Yeah, I definitely think she was taking her time getting that to that point. I think she was struggling with if she was really gonna tell him at all. Which she even told the producers in that little one-on producer that we had. So I think at that point, even when they were in the plane and before that, I don't think she knew if she was gonna tell him or not.
Yeah, and he even mentioned, we get the aside from him saying, I can tell that she's holding something back. And then obviously during dinner, she didn't. And I thought that, Matt had tremendous respect for what she was giving up to be there and the fact that, this was important enough for her to leave her father and all those things that she's got going on. But at the same time, you could see that the closeness with her dad was something he didn't necessarily relate to, especially not in the same way that he and Brie had that similar experience. The close-knit family seemed almost a foreign concept to him. He understood it, he respected it, but it didn't seem like he had the same connection to that with Sarah.
Yeah, and it certainly felt that way when he then responded with, it seemed like he was going to say the same thing he said to Brie, which was, like family's like my rock, like everything to me essentially. But then with Sarah, I think he noticed like, wow, I mean, your family connection is so much deeper than mine, so much tighter. And then he fell back on his safety net rock, which, he talks about as, my faith. Because, I mean, you can't really compare your faith to another's. But, family-wise, I definitely think Sarah had the upper hand there, and he was maybe a little shocked by that close-knitness.
Yeah, he wasn't quite sure how to react. But she opened up enough. He felt that was good enough to go forward. She gets the rose. Good for her. Doesn't lead to a stress-free rose ceremony for her, but again, we'll loop back to that when we cover that at the end here. So the other date was the group date. We talked about this a little bit in the opening section, but there were 18 of them, which is just an absolute crapload of girls for a date. They get there, it's a little rainy, but they have the wedding photo shoot with maybe one of my favorite Bachelor Nation characters, Franco, the photographer, who is just as flamboyant and crazy as the day is long. They do the photo shoot. Not a whole lot goes on. Jacinia gets her kiss right away. We kind of skipped through that part pretty quick. It was neat, but you could tell it wasn't what they were there for. And then we parlay into capture the heart, capture the flag, in the woods, cut the dresses off. Very much not what you would have expected when they got into the wedding dresses.
No, and I think something that they maybe made a mistake of doing is, once again, Chris Harrison came in early. He cut him off before they finished it, because if you remember, I don't know if it was last year or 2 years ago, but there was like a swimsuit kind of modeling where they all the women came out in like a bikini and they all took a picture with the Bachelor. They even had little group ones, like 3 with the Bachelor and everything, but everyone had their moment to take this nice photo. But Chris Harrison's right in the middle. He's like, half you don't get these photos. We're gonna have a little fun. And I think if they had let everyone take a picture first and then had fun, because Rachel was even saying oh, I didn't get to do this. I didn't get to have a picture, and she was pretty distraught about that. And I think it was rough.
Personally, I couldn't care less about the pictures. I thought that the purpose of the date was the game. And we saw a format that we've seen a lot in recent seasons on group dates is winning team stays, losing team goes home. And I think that's become so commonplace. We've seen it the last couple seasons where they've done that. The losing team gets all upset that they don't get to spend time. They just think it's so unfair. We didn't see that this time. I don't know if that got edited out or if it's just one of those things where the girls realize now that that's the formula. That's just what you have to deal with, and you move along. So we get into that. They're spraying paint on each other. You get just cake all over the place. Paint. Dresses get cut. In the end, the
purses
red team
go
wins.
to the face.
Oh yeah, purses all over the place. MJ, who's one that I drafted in the league, she's out there playing just insane defense. She ends up winning the heart, and in the hose job of the century, does not win the MVP in this. And I just want to hear if you have a different thought, because to me this was the most dead obvious MVP selection in the world, and it doesn't go to MJ, and I cannot explain to you how both confused and upset I am about that.
Well, first off, it was the MVB, the most valuable bride. And I have to completely agree with you, because they even showed the clip of MJ just taking that purse right to the face. Honestly, I would have loved a slow-mo of that.
I've got
because
a screenshot.
It was rough.
I got a screenshot in the blog. Someone was running free coming back. MJ comes in out of nowhere. Just beautiful form tackle.
Destroys.
Little high. Comes in a little high.
Yeah.
But nice form tackle. Stops that one down. And then obviously in the end she ends up running it back with it. The MVP went to Mari. All she did was grab onto the heart and go dead weight, which must come from her beauty pageant days fighting off other girls. But
it's not how that works.
She gets the MVP award. In spite of being on the losing team, she gets to go forward on the group date. There wasn't a whole lot else that happened on that group date, even though we went back and had the individual discussions. I felt like there wasn't much there. Lauren got the rose. They had a conversation about faith together, which clearly is a big deal for Matt. And it seemed like that conversation, more than anything else in the day, was how he made his decision for that group date rose. I think I lost you.
Yeah, and it definitely put all the other girls kind of at each other's throats. They're like, oh well, I won. She who should not be named was essentially.
Oh, hang on. A little bit of instability with Jack's internet.
Yeah, so I really think that I thought Lauren getting the rose was the right choice. It was really the only real conversation we saw. We saw a little bit from Kit, but even that conversation, they didn't show the full thing. It looked like, they had a tiny little chuckle together, a nice little moment. She seemed really, in the moment, which I really liked, instead of, always being focused on herself, which is essentially the character that was painted for us coming into this show.
Yeah.
And I think the producers, they cut that conversation short because they're like, oh no, no, this is a future villain. We need to keep her for later and not show this nice mature side that I think is the real Kit that we weren't expecting.
Yeah, so I think that's more or less it for the group date. So we'll parlay that into our next segment, which is the J&B 500 Market Watch. So that being said, here we go. We're going to kind of go over our gainers and losers of the week, sort of our buy and sell, what we have for advice. And Jack, you want to go ahead and start out there with your buy, which you just mentioned, was Kit.
Yeah, I would have to say it was Kit. I think, as I just mentioned, I mean, she showed a side of herself that we weren't expecting, or maybe it was just the real Kit all along, and really, what we saw in that first episode was just a little bit of sass she
Can't
thought she could play.
I'll be completely honest. There's a section in the blog here that I'll link in the description, where I mentioned turnarounds, and I think they're gonna make me like Kit. I didn't want to. I think we assumed that her being this spoiled, rich kid, whatever, was gonna lead her to be sort of entitled and immature, and I think that it's quite the contrary. That growing up with that lifestyle has left her sort of wise and mature beyond her years. And rather than being upset things aren't about her, she seems to sort of be just above all that, and not sinking into the petty drama in the house. So I was very surprised to see Kit's behavior this week, and very impressed. And as much as I don't want to like her, I think I'm going to end up liking her. My buy for the week, I'll get into mine right away, is Lauren. We just talked about her quite a bit there. Got the group date rose. I personally didn't see it a whole lot. They had that nice chat. But that leads me to believe that there's a lot of stuff off camera that she and Matt are connecting on if he went ahead and gave her that group date rose. I'm just assuming at this point, with all the drama going on, there's a lot that's being missed in the edit by the time we see it. And some of those true connections with Matt, and we'll get into that when I get to my sell here, are being missed in the televised version. So I'm going to buy Lauren. I think that's a bit of a sleeper pick. But I look for her stock to rise considerably in the next couple weeks.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, she was one of those women I wasn't really expecting. But yeah, who's your sell this week, Brock?
I'll do my sell right away. My sell is Marilyn. Nothing against Marilyn personally. This is another one where I mentioned that there's got to be a lot going on behind the scenes. We didn't see any of her in the first episode until we got to the rose ceremony. And I remember thinking in that first rose ceremony was a little bit weird when she kept talking about, where's Marilyn's rose? Where's Marilyn's rose? Because to our knowledge, they hadn't spoken. Tonight we get to the cocktail party and Matt pulls out, I believe it was an orchid, is her favorite flower, which I don't know how he knew that because that's not in anything we saw. But the fact that he knows that tells me there was stuff going on behind the scenes. Which is why I'm picking Lauren for the buy. The reason Marilyn is my sell is she's getting dragged into this drama with Victoria. And based on Matt's reaction so far...
Oh, he said her name.
Listen, we said as little as possible. But I'm selling Marilyn because of this. We saw Matt and the way he addressed that situation. And it seems like he's going to be sort of in a position where he's just not going to want to deal with either of them, no matter whose fault it is. So I think she's going to get dragged down by this. And it makes me a little bit sad. Now, your sell parlays neatly into a segment that we alluded to doing in our first episode. And that is, who is the girl behind the vibrator? Your sell this week is, of course...
My sell this week is Katie. I think that she broke down a little too much. I think I don't know if she's gonna be able to handle this process. After being on the losing team for the group date, she seemed very distraught, much more
So
than the other girls.
yeah, my favorite line was her complaining about all the cake on her boobs.
Hmm.
But I agree with you. We saw Katie come in with her big vibrator week one. Matt called it a lightsaber. She seemed kind of fun loving, hid behind that prop. We didn't know a lot about her, and that's what we talked about in episode one: is who is Katie? Who's the girl behind the vibrator? And I think we're seeing here perhaps a lot less confidence than was portrayed on night one with the whole shtick surrounding the vibrator. And yeah, it doesn't look like she's going to hold up well as this process goes forward, especially if we continue to see this much drama in the house and her struggling to get time with Matt. So for me, the girl behind the vibrator is not at all what we would have assumed on night one. I think she's a little bit more fragile than that.
Yeah, and it's a little sad to see because I was really hoping that she would keep that comedy going throughout all of this, and really just um, I keep bringing up MJ, but I was thinking she'd be more like MJ,
Yeah,
be but just like a little funnier.
well, and I'll be honest, MJ is everything we thought she was night one.
Hmm.
She continued all the way through the capture the heart game to just sort of have this lighthearted attitude. Again, I picked her as she was my first pick in our draft, and certainly am keeping with her being one of my favorites throughout this thing.
And so that brings us to our final segment where we're going to be talking about the rose ceremony.
So obviously, leading into this, we had all the drama. The two that have or three that have roses so far: Bree, Lauren, and Sarah. And one note I forgot in the segment about Sarah, Matt on Twitter today was posting stuff to donate to certain ALS foundations. Clearly, that leads me to believe that even if Sarah doesn't end up making it for the long run, that conversation with Sarah had a significant impact on him, enough to the point where he remembered the ALS link and is still pushing that forward now. So that bodes well for Sarah moving forward. But we get into the rose
Yeah.
ceremony, and we really don't get that far. None of the roses that we cared about, and no eliminations, because Sarah seemed to have some sort of a medical emergency about 3 or 4 roses in, to where she sort of fell off the risers and had to be attended to by the medical staff.
Yeah, I mean, immediately I wasn't really sure what was going on. I just saw the producer come up. And granted, I saw Sarah,
I don't think that was
weaving back
producer
and forth a
initially.
little bit.
Initially, it was one of the contestants. The girl standing next to her caught her as she started to fall, and then walked her
Really?
to the back. Yeah,
Okay.
that was. I think we all thought that was a producer at first, but on the rewatch, I think it was Serena P standing next to her, almost caught her falling over, which to me makes it even more dramatic that she was going down that fast. We didn't have a producer time to get in there. But anyway, so they walk her off to the side. She says she's seeing stars. She's about to black out, can't see anything. And we get a call for the medic, and then we cut to a to be continued, which somewhat to my dismay, I wanted to see a resolution to some of the drama we saw so we could move on to new topics next week. But it looks like we're going to continue this rose ceremony and some of these themes into next week.
Yeah, I mean, I hate that to be continued, but I mean, it's reality TV. I mean, I want a clear-cut episode where, we have eliminations. We can talk about those eliminations or celebrate those eliminations.
Yeah,
But
and
yeah, I think it
we didn't get
was.
any.
No, we didn't. I did have, some relaxation at the end of this because, right before that happened, Kit got a rose, Piper got a rose,
And
and
who?
Katie got a rose. So I mean, I'm really hoping that we get to add a little more to our segment of Katie, who is the girl behind the vibrator, next
And
week.
and you mentioned Kit got a rose up front. Normally you get kind of those no drama picks, sort of the easy, obvious ones out the gate. The fact that after week one, Kit is one of those sort of no frills, no drama picks is the
Yeah.
most surprising thing maybe this week. That Kit's just sort of this non-factor in the drama. And like I said, unless something changes dramatically and she makes a heel turn here, I'm gonna end up liking this girl.
Yeah, I mean, in Piper, I was not shocked by that one at all because we've barely seen anything from her on screen except for the tiny little section in the first episode where they were playing skee ball. I think at this point, there must be a lot of stuff behind the scenes, and there's just no drama there. And I think, I mean, I was always telling my Sarah to begin with. I told her, I'm like, you're picking Piper. I'm like, she seems to be a clear, easy, no drama
solid
pick.
Sleeper pick. Yep, continuing
Oh,
forward.
definitely.
So we see in the promos, we continue some Victoria stuff. But beyond that, the promo doesn't really give us much of a hint on what we're going to see next week, other than a continuation of what was going on this week.
Yeah, and I think they did a good job of just showing mostly the characters who had already gotten roses at that point.
Yeah.
I mean, they showed Kit, they showed Katie. So I think, and Anna, Crazy Eyes Anna, seems she will be back. So I think they're trying to keep this rose ceremony a surprise, because it might get shocking for us in this beginning of this next episode.
Yeah, so the only other takeaway from the rose ceremony, and I think it's worth a note just because, we spent so much time talking about her last week, and then she had such a small part this week, is Abigail. She got the first impression rose, sort of universally liked by everybody. She had some sit-down time with Matt, and kind of went through, basically brought up that they hadn't had much time together this week, and she didn't want to lose that connection they had forged. And she came up with the idea of sort of having a little signal of adjusting the ear as sort of a hint at blowing you a kiss in a crowded room. And Matt seemed all over that, and even mentioned in that moment that she's just sort of natural, easy to go along with. So nice to see that the connection with Abigail wasn't just sort of a bright and fast one, that he really feels comfortable with her. He just also needs to explore these other ones, sort of like, Abigail's over here, she's safe, she's done, we're going to set that aside, and we're going to see who else belongs in that lower group. But I could see from the way that goes, Abigail's basically secured herself a spot in the top 8 or so without much question, and now he's just got to go through everybody else to see who else belongs in that group.
Yeah, what I found very interesting about that scene when he gave Abigail a rose, she did the little ear tug. But they didn't show Matt responding with one, and that's something I was kind of looking for. I'm like, oh, one, I'm sure he would remember that because it seemed like such a nice little heartfelt moment. But they didn't show him, and that was a little suspect.
I have to imagine he didn't miss it intentionally, or it was edited out.
Of course not. Yeah.
So that's where we leave episode 2, sort of on a cliffhanger, literally on a cliffhanger with the to be continued. We look forward to week 3. Any additional thoughts on week 2 before we wrap this up?
No, that'll be all from me. I'm just, itching for more excitement on this next episode. I want some eliminations. I need to put some more skull and crossbones on my list.
That's for sure. So again, I wrote the blog on this today that goes into a few other details. I'll put that link in the description. We'll be back here next week. The hope is to have a new episode of this drop every Wednesday. We'll try and work in some new segments, obviously, as some of our girls drop off, some new ones come in. If you have any thoughts, opinions on it, feel free to drop that in the comments. We're very susceptible to public opinion, so we will adjust the entire format of the show based on what you think. And if you've made it this far, congratulations to both of you. You get to hear this little note. If you liked it, don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, the whole deal for the YouTube stuff. Thank you so much for joining in. I'm Brock. That's Jack. This has been Brock and Jack Talk The Bachelor.